Tom lived in a small wooden house near the end of Pine Road. The road was narrow and calm, with tall trees on both sides. Birds often sat on the power lines in the morning, and the sound of leaves filled the air when the wind passed through. Tom chose this place because it felt peaceful. He had spent many years working in busy towns, and now he wanted a slow life. Tom was not a man who liked trouble. He followed rules, paid his bills on time, and kept his yard clean. Every morning, he woke up early, made coffee, and walked around his property with his canine dog, Rex. Rex was strong, smart, and well-trained. Tom trusted Rex, and Rex trusted Tom. They moved together like old friends who understood each other without words. The neighborhood had a homeowners group that managed shared rules. Most people did not think much about it. They paid a small fee and went on with their lives. For a long time, the group caused no problems. That changed when a woman named Linda became the leader. Linda believed rules were the most important thing in life. She walked around with a notebook, writing down small details. She watched lawns, fences, trash bins, and parked cars. Many neighbors noticed her staring at their homes, but they stayed quiet. No one wanted conflict. Tom noticed her too, but he did not worry. He knew his house followed the rules. His fence was built with permission years ago. His dog was trained and calm. His yard was neat. One afternoon, Tom returned from a walk with Rex and found a letter taped to his front door. It came from the homeowners group. The letter said his fence was too high and needed to be changed within 10 days. Tom was surprised. He measured the fence again. It matched the allowed height written in the rulebook. He took photos and checked old emails that showed approval from years ago. Tom wrote a polite reply and sent it to the homeowner's office. He explained everything clearly and calmly. Days passed with no response. Soon another letter arrived. This one mentioned noise complaints about Rex. Tom knew this was not true. Rex rarely barked, and only when someone came too close to the property. Tom felt confused but stayed calm. He sent another reply with dates, times, and notes. Linda did not respond, but the letters continued. Tom began to feel uneasy. He noticed Linda standing across the street more often. She wrote in her notebook and took pictures with her phone. Rex noticed it too. His ears lifted, and he stayed closer to Tom when Linda was nearby. One morning, Tom saw two unknown men walking slowly past his house. They stopped near the fence and talked quietly. Tom watched from his porch. Rex stood beside him, alert but quiet. The men looked around and pointed at the fence before leaving. That same evening, Tom found another warning letter. This one sounded more serious. It demanded immediate changes and mentioned penalties. Tom knew something was wrong. Tom decided to document everything. He installed security cameras around his house. He kept copies of every letter and email. He wrote down dates and times of strange visits. He believed preparation was better than fear. A few days later, the two men returned. This time, they knocked on Tom's door. Tom opened it calmly, with Rex standing at his side. The men spoke in firm voices and said they were sent to deal with the fence issue. They did not show any official papers. Tom asked them politely to leave. He explained that all issues should go through proper channels. The men smiled in a way that made Tom uncomfortable. They said he should think carefully and walked away. Tom felt a tight feeling in his chest, but he stayed steady. He closed the door and checked his cameras. Everything was recorded. That night, Tom did not sleep much. He sat at his table, reading the rulebook again. He knew he was right, but he also knew that some people did not care about truth. Rex lay near his feet, calm and watchful. The next day, Tom talked to a few neighbors. They shared quiet stories of warnings, letters, and pressure. No one wanted to speak openly, but many felt the same fear. Tom realized this was bigger than him. He decided that if the pressure continued, he would contact local authorities for guidance. Not for conflict, but for safety and clarity. He believed rules should protect people, not scare them. As the sun set that evening, Tom stood on his porch with Rex. The air was quiet, but tension hung heavy. Something told him this was only the beginning. The peaceful life he worked hard to build was being tested. And Tom was ready to stand firm, calmly and lawfully, no matter what came next. The days after the strange visit felt heavier for Tom. The house was the same, the trees still moved in the wind, and the road stayed quiet, yet something had changed. Tom could feel it in the air. Every sound made him more alert. Rex noticed it too and stayed close, watching every movement outside the fence. Tom kept his routine steady. He woke early, made coffee, and checked his cameras. Nothing looked wrong at first, but later in the week, small things began to happen. A trash notice appeared on his bin, even though it was placed correctly. A warning was posted about parking, even though his truck was in his driveway. Each notice carried the same signature from the homeowner's office. Tom sent polite replies again. He stayed respectful and clear. He attached photos and copies of rules. Still, no answers came back. One afternoon, Tom received a visit from a neighbor named Mark. Mark was older and spoke quietly. He stood on the porch and looked around before talking. He told Tom that Linda had been asking questions about him. She wanted to know how long he planned to stay and whether he caused problems before. Tom felt uneasy hearing this. He thanked Mark for the warning. After Mark left, Tom wrote everything down in his notebook. The next day, the two unknown men returned. This time, they came while Tom was working in his yard. They leaned on the fence and spoke loudly. They told Tom he was making things difficult and should fix the fence quickly. Rex stood beside Tom, calm but firm. Tom told them again to leave. He reminded them that they had no permission to be there. One of the men laughed and said rules could change. That was when Tom knew this was no longer about rules. After they left, Tom checked his cameras and saved the clips. He also called the homeowner's office. No one answered. He left a message asking for a written explanation of the complaints. That evening, Tom sat at his table and reviewed everything again. He felt frustrated but not angry. He believed calm thinking was the best tool. He decided to speak with more neighbors. Over the next few days, Tom talked to several people on Pine Road. Many shared similar stories. Letters without clear reasons. Visits that felt like pressure. People felt afraid to speak openly. They worried about penalties or trouble. Tom realized that Linda was using her position to control others. The homeowners group was meant to protect the neighborhood, not scare it. Tom decided to take a careful step. He contacted the local sheriff office and asked for advice. He explained the situation calmly and shared that strangers had been sent to his property without permission. The officer listened and suggested Tom keep records and call again if the visits continued. That night, Tom felt slightly relieved. Knowing he was not alone helped him sleep better. The next morning, Tom found another letter on his door. This one demanded immediate action and warned of serious consequences. The tone felt personal, not professional. Tom read it slowly and placed it in his folder. Later that day, a car Tom did not recognize parked across the street. Someone sat inside for a long time. Rex watched from the window. Tom took notes and stayed inside. The car left after an hour, but the message was clear. Someone wanted Tom to feel watched. Tom refused to be pushed into fear. He focused on what he could control. He strengthened his camera coverage and spoke again with the sheriff office. He shared the new details and sent copies of letters and video clips. The sheriff told Tom they would look into it. The tension reached a peak when the two men returned again. This time, they did not speak much. They walked around the fence and pointed at different areas. Tom came outside and firmly told them to leave at once. Rex stood still, showing discipline and control. The men left without a word. That night, Tom felt tired but determined. He knew he had done nothing wrong. He also knew that staying silent would not stop the pressure. He wrote a clear summary of events and prepared to share it with the sheriff in person. As the sun went down, Tom sat on his porch with Rex at his feet. The neighborhood looked calm, but beneath the surface, something was moving. The struggle was no longer just about a fence. It was about standing up for fairness. Tom was ready for whatever came next, not with anger, but with patience and truth. Tom woke before sunrise. The sky was pale, and the road outside his house was still empty. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, reading through his notes again. Dates, letters, visits, names, and camera times filled the pages. What started as a simple warning had turned into a pattern of pressure. Rex lay nearby, calm and alert. The dog seemed to understand that these were not normal days. Every sound outside caught his attention. Later that morning, Tom drove to the local sheriff office. He brought copies of letters, printed photos, and saved video clips. He spoke slowly and clearly, explaining everything from the beginning. The officer listened carefully and asked questions. Tom answered honestly and stayed respectful. The officer said the situation was concerning. Sending people to a private property without permission was not acceptable. The officer promised to review the material and follow up. Tom left feeling a sense of relief. For the first time, someone in authority had taken his concerns seriously. When Tom returned home, he noticed tire marks near the edge of his yard. They were fresh. He took photos and added them to his records. Rex sniffed the ground and stayed close to Tom. That afternoon, Linda sent another message through the homeowner's system. This time, the message was short and firm. It demanded a meeting at the homeowner's office. No details were given. Tom replied that he would attend only if the meeting followed proper rules and included written reasons. He wanted everything documented. The reply came quickly. Linda agreed but added that delays would lead to action. Tom read the message twice. The tone felt less official and more personal. The meeting took place 2 days later. Tom entered the small office with his folder in hand. Linda sat behind a desk, smiling tightly. 2 other board members sat quietly beside her. Linda spoke first. She claimed Tom was refusing to cooperate. She said his fence and dog were problems. Tom calmly presented his documents. He showed approvals, rules, and photos. He explained his position without raising his voice. The other board members looked uncomfortable. They flipped through the pages and asked questions. Tom answered each one. Linda grew frustrated. She insisted that changes were needed, even without clear reasons. Tom stated firmly that he would not change anything without proper proof. The meeting ended without agreement. That evening, Tom felt tired but proud. He had stayed calm and honest. He had not given in to pressure. The next day, the situation took another turn. A neighbor named Sarah came to Tom's door. She looked nervous but determined. She told Tom that Linda had spoken to several neighbors, warning them not to support him. Sarah said others wanted to help but were afraid. Tom thanked her and told her he understood. He wrote down what she shared. Later that week, the 2 unknown men returned again. This time, they came closer to the house. Tom stepped outside immediately. He told them to leave and reminded them they were being recorded. Rex stood beside him, silent but watchful. One man said this could end easily if Tom just complied. Tom replied that he would follow the law and nothing else. He asked them to leave one final time. They left without another word. Tom contacted the sheriff office again and reported the visit. He sent the video clips right away. The officer responded and said they would handle it. That night, Tom barely slept. His mind stayed active, thinking about every detail. He was not afraid, but he was aware. He trusted the process and his preparation. The next morning, a sheriff vehicle drove slowly past his house. It stopped briefly, then continued. Tom felt reassured knowing that help was nearby. Later that day, the sheriff visited Tom's home. He reviewed the new footage and notes. He confirmed that the behavior toward Tom was not acceptable. He said a formal review was starting. News began to spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors whispered and shared stories. More people came forward with similar experiences. The pressure that once felt focused on Tom was now exposed. Linda grew quieter. The letters stopped. The unknown men did not return. Tom knew the situation was not over, but the balance had changed. He felt stronger, not because of force, but because of truth. That evening, Tom walked his property with Rex as the sun set. The fence stood firm. The house felt like home again, even with uncertainty ahead. Tom understood something important. Standing up calmly and legally could bring change. Silence only helped pressure grow. As night fell, Tom locked his door, checked his cameras, and rested. The next step would come soon, and he was ready to face it with patience and clarity. The days that followed felt different for Tom. The quiet on Pine Road was no longer heavy with tension. It was a careful quiet, as if the neighborhood itself was waiting. Tom continued his routine, but now he felt more confident. He knew that what had been hidden was starting to come into the open. One morning, Tom received a call from the sheriff office. The officer told him that a formal review of the homeowners group had begun. They were checking records, messages, and actions taken by the group leadership. Tom was asked to come in later that week to give a full statement. Tom agreed without hesitation. When the day came, Tom arrived with his organized folder. Inside were letters, photos, notes, and printed video stills. He sat calmly and spoke clearly. He explained how the pressure began, how strangers appeared, and how the letters became more threatening in tone. He did not exaggerate. He only shared facts. The officer thanked him and said others had also come forward. That news stayed with Tom as he drove home. He realized his calm actions had given others courage. The issue was no longer one man against authority. It was now a shared concern. Back in the neighborhood, small changes were visible. Linda was no longer walking around with her notebook. The homeowner's office stayed quiet. No new letters appeared on doors. A few neighbors began to wave at Tom again. Some stopped to talk. One woman thanked him quietly and said she felt safer now. Tom listened more than he spoke. A week later, a notice was sent to all homeowners. It explained that the group leadership was under review and that no enforcement actions would take place during that time. The message felt official and calm, very different from the earlier warnings. Tom read it carefully and placed it in his folder. That afternoon, the sheriff returned to Tom's house. He explained that evidence showed Linda had acted beyond her role. She had contacted people outside the group to pressure residents. That behavior was not allowed. The sheriff also said the strangers had been identified and warned. They were told to stay away from the neighborhood. Tom felt a deep sense of relief. Not victory, but fairness. Later that day, Linda visited Tom's house. She stood on the sidewalk and did not step onto the property. Her voice was tight, and her confidence was gone. She said misunderstandings had occurred and that things would change. Tom listened quietly. He did not argue. He simply said he wanted peace and fair treatment, nothing more. Linda left without another word. Over the next few days, the homeowners group announced a temporary leader. Meetings were opened to residents. Rules were reviewed openly. Neighbors asked questions without fear. Tom attended one meeting. He sat in the back and listened. When asked to speak, he shared his experience calmly. Others nodded. Some shared their own stories. The room felt lighter by the end of the meeting. At home, Tom noticed Rex was more relaxed. The dog spent more time lying in the sun and less time watching the road. Tom smiled, knowing animals felt changes before people did. One evening, Tom received a message from the sheriff. The review was nearly complete. The findings confirmed misuse of authority. Changes would be permanent. Tom thanked the officer and ended the call. As days passed, life slowly returned to normal. Mornings were quiet again. Walks felt peaceful. The fence stood unchanged, just as it always had. One afternoon, Mark and Sarah stopped by together. They thanked Tom for standing firm. They said many neighbors felt grateful but had not known how to speak up before. Tom told them he had simply done what felt right. The neighborhood began to feel like a community again. Weeks later, a final notice was sent out. Linda was officially removed from her role. New guidelines were set to prevent future abuse of power. Outside involvement was clearly banned. Transparency was required. Tom read the notice carefully and placed it with the others. He closed the folder and put it away. That evening, Tom sat on his porch as the sun dipped below the trees. Rex lay at his feet, calm and content. The road was quiet, but this time it felt peaceful, not tense. Tom reflected on the journey. He had not planned to challenge anyone. He only wanted to protect his home and his peace. By staying calm, prepared, and honest, he had helped bring change. The experience taught him something important. Strength did not always come from loud voices or force. Sometimes it came from patience and truth. As the stars appeared, Tom stood and went inside. He locked the door, checked his cameras, and turned off the lights. The hardest part was now behind him. One final chapter remained, but Tom felt ready. Peace had returned, and it felt earned. Time moved forward quietly after the final notice was shared. The neighborhood on Pine Road felt different now. Not perfect, but honest. People walked more freely. Doors stayed open longer in the evenings. Conversations returned to normal topics like weather, gardens, and work. Tom felt the change in small ways. No letters appeared on his door. No strangers walked past his fence. No silent watching from across the street. The calm felt real this time. Every morning, Tom continued his routine. He woke early, made coffee, and stepped outside with Rex. The air felt lighter. Rex no longer watched every shadow. He walked with a relaxed pace, stopping to sniff the grass and enjoy the morning. Tom smiled often during those walks. One afternoon, Tom received a call from the sheriff office. The officer informed him that the review was officially closed. All actions had been completed. The case was resolved. Tom thanked the officer and ended the call. He stood quietly for a moment, letting the words sink in. The long chapter of stress had finally closed. Later that week, a community meeting was held at the local hall. Many neighbors attended. The new leadership spoke openly and welcomed questions. Clear rules were explained. Everyone was encouraged to speak freely without fear. Tom attended but did not sit in the front. He listened as others shared their thoughts. Some neighbors admitted they had stayed silent before because they were scared. Others said they felt stronger now. When Tom was invited to speak, he stood calmly. He thanked the community for coming together. He said he never wanted conflict, only fairness. He reminded everyone that peace was built by honesty and respect. The room responded with quiet agreement. After the meeting, several neighbors came to thank Tom personally. Some shook his hand. Others simply nodded with appreciation. Tom accepted their words humbly. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who stood his ground when it mattered. At home, Tom began to focus on the future. He repaired a small section of his porch and planted flowers near the fence. He worked slowly, enjoying the simple tasks. Each improvement felt meaningful. Rex stayed close, always calm, always loyal. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the trees, Tom sat on his porch and reflected. The struggle had tested him in ways he never expected. He had felt pressure, worry, and uncertainty. But he had also learned patience and confidence. He realized that silence could sometimes allow wrong actions to grow. Speaking calmly and clearly could bring light to hidden problems. A few days later, Mark stopped by with fresh bread. Sarah followed with a basket of fruit. They sat together on the porch and talked about ordinary things. Laughter returned easily. Tom felt thankful. Weeks passed, and the memory of stress slowly faded. Pine Road felt like a place of balance again. The rules were fair. The people felt heard. Tom stored his folder of documents in a drawer. He did not throw it away. He kept it as a reminder. Not of fear, but of strength. One quiet night, Tom stood by the window and looked out at the road. The lights were soft. The trees moved gently in the breeze. Rex slept peacefully nearby. Tom felt proud, not in a loud way, but in a steady one. He had protected his home without anger. He had faced pressure without losing control. He had trusted truth and patience. Life did not always reward effort immediately, but sometimes it did. As Tom turned off the lights and prepared for sleep, he knew one thing for certain. His home was safe. His peace was real. And no one could take that away again.